another edition of Cohasset Common. I'm your host, Town Manager Chris Sr., and on this episode, we'll go behind the scenes at Town Hall, meeting with Michelle Leary, the town's new Assistant Town Manager, and taking a close look at what we do with communications with Justin Shrair, the town's Communications Specialist and Community Engagement Officer, or as we just call him, the Communications Guy. Thank you for joining us. More to come. We're all familiar with the beautiful things that make Cohasset what it is, from the common to the coast. But one of the things we're not so familiar with are the people who make it run every day. With me today is Michelle Leary, the new Assistant Town Manager. Michelle, welcome to Cohasset Common.
Thank you, Chris.
So one of the things that we're going to talk about today is just a little bit of what you do. I think it's fair to say that you're involved in a lot. For example, the field study is something you did a lot of work on. So tell us a little bit about how that came to be.
Sure. So the field study was an initiative brought forth by the select board. So we hired an outside agency to review all of the fields in town. They came back with an assessment to let us know where our deficiencies were, where we can make improvements, what we were doing well, and we moved that forward with the select board. That's one of their initiatives. So we continue to work through that.
Now, one of the things that's kind of interesting, so you started with us working for Public Works. You kind of came in and said, I'm going to give this a shot, right? And we very rapidly realized that you could juggle a lot of things at the same time. And it's part of the fun, right, of the
Yes.
job, exactly. So you move rapidly from that into procurement. So one of the things you've been doing a lot of work on is procurement. So how much of the job do you think that takes up?
Sure. So procurement's busy. Based on the Commonwealth, you have to procure anything over $50,000. So therefore, many of our major projects must be procured. I procure for every department here in Town Hall, as well as committees that are working on certain initiatives. Currently in the procurement queue is an electric school bus. That's exciting for the town of Cohasset. Actually, those bids are due in today.
And one of the things that people have to understand is that procurement is purchasing, basically, right?
Right.
But there's some very strict rules. I mean, if you were at home and you wanted to buy a car, you just go to a dealer or go online, right? It's not so simple for us.
Correct. So there's thresholds that you have to meet, and there's certain guidelines. There's advertising guidelines, there's specification guidelines, and it all comes together in the form of an RFP, an RFQ. You issue it, and you hope to get the best bidder back that can give us the best price.
Now, sometimes we can buy off something called a state contract. What is that?
Yep, so the Commonwealth of Massachusetts already pre-qualifies vendors. So therefore, they have vendors in several different categories. You have IT, you have vehicle category, you have cleaning category, and you can choose vendors that have already been pre-selected by the Commonwealth.
How much do you think we use of that?
I think historically we've relied on those contracts, but now with these generational projects moving forward, I think we rely more on the open bidding process.
So a fair amount of day-to-day is just making sure that we're buying things the right way, because the state requires us to, right?
Correct.
In fact, one of the things that we've both learned, because we both went through it, there's a whole training class. So tell us a little bit about what that was like.
Yeah, so there's the MCPPO certificate program.
Which is the Massachusetts Certified Public Procurement Officer.
Correct.
Yeah.
And what it is, it's a 3-day intensive course now online. There's 2 pieces that are self-directed, which can take up to 8 weeks. And then there's a 2-piece webinar that takes 8 hours a day for 3 days as continuing education. It's an intense certification process, and they want to make sure that when you're procuring on your own that you have all of the facts and figures that you need to make sure you're making a legal procurement.
So it's important. So it's something that Cohasset wasn't necessarily always following the rules on in the past. I think it's fair to say. And it's been a little hard to get some of our folks to understand it's a set of rules and we have to do it.
Right.
The goal is obviously to get the best price and the best product.
Correct.
So as you said, we have things like cars or chairs or all of that. But some of the things that are more complicated are obviously a little bit bigger than that.
Correct. For instance, we have an electric school bus bid right now. Those bids are actually due in today. That was quite a process. We worked with the Alternative Energy Committee and Tanya Bodell to help us initiate the specification for the school bus. And we put that out on the street, and we'll get something back today that's advantageous for the community as we try to electrify.
That's exciting. That's going to be the first time we've tried that, because we actually do have a fleet of 3 Leafs, right? Nissan Leafs, which are electric vehicles.
Correct.
And we funded that through a grant.
We did fund that through a grant, and we also have 18 charging stations throughout the community that were also funded through a grant. National Grid's been a great partner in helping us electrify many components that we can.
So it's fair to say, so in addition to procurement, you do a lot of work with grants.
Yes.
And I think one of the ones that's been exciting and a big challenge has been working on the waterfront, particularly I think with Parker Ave, right? So we have money to do the boat ramp.
We do.
Just been some challenges.
Yeah, so the Parker Ave boat ramp project's a great project. So we've worked on that for upwards of 2 years now. We went through a series of grant funding cycles with Seaport Economic Council. They awarded us grant funding for engineering, and then they actually awarded us funding to rebuild the Parker Ave boat ramp. We ran into some challenges due to supply chain issues. The boat ramp was supposed to start in December of this past year. However, the project is now scheduled to start November 1st of 2022.
Okay, so we kept the price, if I recall, right?
We kept the price, we kept the same vendor, and the great part about this is Seaport Economic Council actually rolled the funds over to make sure we didn't lose anything.
That's great. So there's that work. There's a lot of I's to dot and T's to cross on grant applications and management, right?
Correct.
And another big area that you've been working on is just capital projects in general, right? So you've been working with the Capital Budget Committee pretty intensely for a couple of years.
Yeah. So that's actually a great project. It's a great initiative. You look 10 years ahead, and it's capital for every single department in town. So you have your DPW, you have your harbor, schools. Every major department in town has their 5-year capital plan. We're hoping to get to a 10-year capital plan soon, and now we're actually working on generational projects, which would be almost a 30-year plan.
Things like improvements to the schools, improvements to the town hall, which are in the basement of right now, actually, and things that really would last, as we said, decades.
Correct.
So most of the time with our capital, we're talking about things that are maybe 5 or 10 years.
Right.
So one of the things I don't think people realize is that we actually plan. Not only are we planning 5 or 10 years out, but every year we go through a cycle. It starts really now. It's summer here, as we sit here, and we start really in August, September, and we start to get departmental requests, right?
Yep. So we start in September. We compile all the departmental requests. We sit down. You and I sit down in November to vet some of the projects. We bring all the departments back in. And then once we review all of the projects and the requests, we send it off to the Capital Budget Committee in likely December timeframe for them to start their process.
So by the time everything gets at town meeting, it's really been many, many months of advance work on that, right?
Correct.
And at the same time, we're looking long term. So we're asking departments to give us 5 and 10 year estimates as to whether it's upgrades to equipment or to their office space or whatever they need, right?
Right. And for me, it's many months of work. For the department heads, oftentimes it's many years of work because they have to prioritize their capital needs over the 10 years. So they're really thinking about this every year as to what they need next.
And so it's a constant process, and we're always updating. We're looking at what kind of grant funding there might be, alternative funding processes, and also what prices look like, right?
Correct.
And sometimes opportunities present themselves, and sometimes challenges present themselves.
Correct.
Something might break down unexpectedly. We had that happen with a piece of highway equipment this past year. One of the front loaders, I think it was.
Yeah.
The highway department does a great job of maintaining equipment. This one, I just think, failed early. We've already had it 20 years.
Yes.
And sometimes you have to kind of accelerate that kind of work.
Right. So it forced us into a rental situation, but ultimately we received a new piece of equipment.
So procurement, purchasing, all this work with capital, and then we talk about generational projects. So one of the things that's really been on the radar screen of the community has been things like the school facility study, town hall, fields and courts. And I think the fields and courts, there was a lot of conversation about that.
There was.
And you were right in the middle of that.
I was. It's very exciting to me. Recreational projects, very exciting. It was interesting to see where the deficits were, but also where we were excelling in. We have a lot of community assets that surrounding communities do not have. And then we need more space because we have more activity, not only from the children, but the community at large, there's a large population that likes to play tennis, for instance. There's requests for pickleball. So we're not just focusing on the needs of the youth organizations, but we're also focusing on the needs of the community at large.
Right, because the Little League fields are a little more unique. Those are mostly kids. At the same time, a soccer field can be played on by adults too, or
Correct.
older kids and younger kids.
Yeah.
And we know that Alumni Field, which is, again, that was a very big procurement we've just gone through with the schools. The track is used all the time for people to walk outside of school hours.
Right.
And the field is used by sports, organized high school sports and varsity sports, as well as just community organizations.
Correct, and you have the opportunity to actually, if you build the assets, you have the opportunity to rent these assets out to the communities that do not have them.
And one of the things that's really important as you go through that is get engaged in the community. So I know there was a lot of work done with the community youth sports organizations as part of the field and court study, for example.
Right, we did hold 2, maybe 3 public forums that invited all the stakeholders, and the stakeholders were the youth organization directors. And oftentimes just some community members that abut these properties, they were involved as well.
So it's important that we get as much input as possible. We look at what's conceivable, what we can fund. So that's, and because there's so much of this going on, the community's grown. I mean, even in the time I've been here, it's increased by 10%, the population, and the school population is eager and excited. The parents are looking for great opportunities, and it's helping fuel a lot of the conversations that we're having. We know that that's up on the website, right? People can look at the field and court study that's up there. And I know there'll be ongoing conversations as we go through the seasons.
Right. For that matter, any procurement that anyone would like to look at is also on the website.
So people are excited about learning about how we procure a police car if they want to bid on something. It's all up there,
It's
right?
all up there, yeah.
Okay. Now you didn't start in town government. You've been in the private sector, obviously, before here.
Yes.
So.
So I started my career in sales. I've always been in sales. It just came an opportunity where, the travel became a little too much and I wanted more time home with my family. So I figured, let's jump into the municipal sector. And actually, I love it. It was a great change for me and a positive change.
And in fact, you just completed a year-long program. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
I did. So the program was a master's certificate program in public administration or government administration. It was an intensive program offered by Suffolk University. It was held every Friday from September till June. There were many components. HR was a component, human resources. There was a financial component. There was just really how to manage people and how to manage time was a component of it. It was very interesting. It was a lot of work. I'm glad I did it because there were many things that I still don't know, and I learn every day. And this course actually gave me a broader view of many of the different things that people do here in Town Hall.
So it's something that, making the transition from the private to the public sector, which all of us have done to one extent or another, that it seems the same, but there's a lot of differences.
There are a lot of differences. I thought, wow, it's just going to be easy. I'll know what I'm doing. And it's very different. Your management style has to adapt a little bit more because being in sales, I was an individual contributor. Now I'm part of a team. So now it's all about the team and, how we can foster the relationships so we have the best end result for the community.
And the rules are different too sometimes. I mean,
Yes.
It may seem very arbitrary if you're not in them every day, and sometimes even on the inside they can seem a little arbitrary. That said, they're there and we have to follow them.
Correct. And I think oftentimes, and I thought this as well when I came here, why does everything take so long? Well, it's not that everything takes so long. There's just a lot more boxes that you have to check in a municipal government because you are using taxpayers' funds for projects. So therefore, you can't just arbitrarily go do something without checking 5 or 10 boxes.
Right.
So there are checks and balances in place.
And again, as you point out, because it's taxpayer money.
Right.
There are controls in place so that we're doing things the right way. There's accounting for it, and there's accountability for it.
Correct.
So,
Yep.
so what's been the most fun you've had in the last since you've been taking this new role on?
So honestly, the field study was great. I enjoyed working with all the stakeholders in that. I enjoy working on these larger projects. I find it interesting to see what the community feels important and what the people I work with find important every day. And I think there's a nice synergy there. And I think the long-term projects is really what I enjoy most. because I can start at the beginning and you see something at the end. You see a product at the end for everything you've worked for. So it's very nice.
It's a lot of a sense of reward
Yeah.
when you've particularly when you've been able to pull it all together
Yes.
and help catalyze it. So, because
Right.
again, we're fulfilling the community's wishes.
Correct.
So,
Correct.
so again, it's been great working with you. We're very excited to have you in your new role.
Thank you very much.
Michelle Leary, the Assistant Town Manager at Cohasset. Thank you for joining us on Cohasset Common.
Thank you very much.
One of the things we like to do on Cohasset Common is go a little bit behind the scenes. And today we're going to be with Justin Shrair, the communications guy, much longer title than that. Welcome
Thank
to
you so
Cohasset
much.
Common.
Thank you for having me, Chris.
So one of the things that we've prioritized, and this is a select board goal that we've implemented actually going back to the spring, is bring someone and do this full time. We have a good story to tell in Cohasset, and we're going to talk a little bit about some of the stories you've told and the stories we'll be telling. And so the select board said, hey, we need to do something more elaborate. The website's really important, the social media is important. Someone has to live this. Cohasset's a busy, active place. There's a lot going on. So we went down, we did some searching, and we found, I think, the absolute right fit for this job, and that's Justin. Tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got to Cohasset.
Absolutely. So I'm originally from Western Massachusetts, the second part of Massachusetts, as many people tell me.
So
Born
for
and
me,
raised out
West
there.
for me, West is past Westboro, so you're a little further past that. Right?
I am much further west. Born and raised out there. Went to school out there. Went to college at Roger Williams University in Bristol, Rhode Island. And at that time, I was a communications major and a theater minor. So at that time, I wanted to go into theater. And so I thought, you know what? We'll have communications and we'll have theater, and they'll hopefully mirror each other. There are a lot of similarities between both of them. And at one point, I actually studied in New York City at the Lee Strasberg Theater and Film Institute, because I really thought I was going to go into New York City and hopefully be on Broadway. And when that door kind of closed, another door opened. I decided to go back to school and get my Master of Science in Broadcast Journalism. And I really wanted to continue to tell stories. I really wanted to help out folks. And so I ended up going into the communications field, specifically broadcast journalism, and I started in television. So I worked in TV as a TV news reporter for about 7.5 years before I moved into my current role that I'm in now.
So you've had a couple of very interesting stops along the way, so tell us a little bit about that.
Absolutely. So I started in Bangor, Maine, in a smaller television market. In a TV market, you typically start in a smaller area and you work your way up over the next few years. And so I started in Bangor as what was called back then an MMJ, multimedia journalist. So I am shooting all my own video. I am producing a lot of my own video. I am writing my own scripts, and I am managing the website. So kind of a one-person band, if you may.
Exactly.
And then I was
And
there
what was
for
your
about
turf,
2 years.
by the way? How much
That's right.
territory did you cover?
So I was in central northern Maine, I like to call it Bangor, and I actually covered most of the state. I
big state.
reported, it's a massive state, and I was able to meet the people from Portland all the way up to Bangor, all the way up to Holton and Presque Isle. And one of the great parts about that job is I was really able to travel and meet people along the way and tell stories, whether it was in a large city like Portland or a smaller city like Bangor or even a smaller town along the way. So I spent 2 years there, and I absolutely loved it. It's a beautiful area if you ever get the chance to head up there. So I worked there for 2 years, and then I made my next move out to Tulsa, Oklahoma, where I was there for 3 years as a news reporter.
And that's a pretty different change there, yeah.
Absolutely right. So we're going from a city with about 33,000 to a city that has about 400,000+ people. And it was wonderful. It was a great experience. I was there for about 3 years. I was at a CBS affiliate out there. And that's really where I like to say I really learned to cut my teeth. And I was able to do some investigative journalism out there as well. So I spent 3 years out there as a general assignment reporter, covering everything, working night side, which is basically the afternoon and evening shift.
Which is where most people watch the news anyway.
Correct. We had a 10 o'clock p.m., we had a 9 p.m., we had a 4 and we had a 5, and we had a 6 p.m. So those were the main shows that I was on out there. It was wonderful. It was a great experience. And then I moved to North Carolina after that.
That's another big culture change.
That's correct. I was in central North Carolina. We covered Winston-Salem, North Carolina, Greensboro, North Carolina, High Point, North Carolina, and then kind of the smaller cities and towns in between. It's a great experience.
So you have got quite a wealth of experience telling stories.
Absolutely.
And that's one of the things that, and also, and not just telling, well, I guess finding them, and telling them and helping people tell them. And that's one of the things that was most exciting when we met you. As part of the interview process, we asked the candidates to come up with kind of a model. We used dog licensing, not the most sexy thing, but we said, let's see what we could do with it. And you had a lot of fun with that.
We did. It was a good time. I was able to produce a video. We produced some fun graphics as well, and it was a great little project. And I love telling stories. I enjoy meeting people. I always tell folks my job is different every day, because when I come in, I never know really what's going to happen. I could be out on a shoot with the National Weather Service, which we'll talk about a little bit later. We could be talking about roads and bridges. We could be I could be at a select board meeting. So my day is different, which is what I really enjoy.
So since you started, we've kind of jumped in, and there's a number of things you're working on. But tell me a little bit about just how you've kind of learned about Cohasset. What have you been out there doing?
Absolutely. So, what I like to do is when I get into a town or community, go out there and meet the people, meet the citizens of Cohasset. So I've really had the opportunity to sit down and have coffee with folks. I've had the opportunity to do some stories on some really great citizens here in Cohasset. And I've also had the opportunity to meet with boards and committees and understand what some of their goals are and really help them push their communications plan in a positive direction. So it's been wonderful. I mean, we started, when I first started here in late April, we had Chief Sylvia's retirement, which was a longer piece that we put together. And since then, I have had other pieces that I've done. We've also done, the website. That's another big aspect of my job as well. It's not just video, it's not just graphics. It's not just working on press releases.
It's content to it.
It's content as well. And it's producing that content, and it's getting that content out to folks, and it's making sure that the citizens of Cohasset are aware of what's happening here in the local level.
So one of the things that you've really kind of upped our game in is an area that we weren't doing a lot with it, and that's the social media front.
Absolutely.
And again, this is not to the exclusion of anything else, it's to the inclusion of this. And you've done a couple of kind of fun Facebook Lives, like at a couple of events we had.
Absolutely. We had a wonderful event when the farmers market started up just a few weeks ago. We had a wonderful Facebook Live about the farmers market opening back up for the summer. I also was able to do a Facebook Live with some of the Safe Harbor folks, and Nicole Balashi. She has an amazing program over there. And we've really been able to take social media to the next level. We are now verified. We have the official blue check mark on both the Cohasset Facebook page as well as the police department's page. So that's also something that folks may not really understand about my job. Is not only do I help out with social media for the town, but I also help out the fire department, and I also help out the police department and the emergency management agency with some of their social media pages as well, because we want to make sure that we are getting that information out to everyone.
When we say town, we do literally mean town. So Justin's not only worked with all of our public safety, elder affairs, but also with the schools. He's done some work with the schools too.
Absolutely. And it's wonderful. We just did a great little story about the 7th grade girls lacrosse team and how they really rallied the community together to raise money for Ukrainian students that had to flee Ukraine and that are now, I believe they're now living in Ireland. So the 7th grade girls lacrosse team really rallied together, and they rallied the community together to raise money and to get supplies out there to those kids, which is wonderful.
And that's a story that maybe people wouldn't have known outside of that little world.
Absolutely.
If we didn't have you plugged into that.
Absolutely. So. We've had several newspapers pick up that article as well, and it was a great experience, and it was wonderful meeting kids, 7th grade kids who are really, really into serving their community and who are really looking for ways to make not only Cohasset better, but who are looking to make the world a better place. And that's ultimately what you want at the end of the day. That's great.
So you've seen us through parts of 2 seasons. You came in the spring, late spring, now we're in the summer.
That's right.
So what are you looking forward to as we kind of head towards fall and winter?
I'm looking forward to really adjusting to the winter. It's been about 7.5 years since I've been back here in the wintertime. Tulsa was very hot. Winston-Salem, North Carolina, we had a very mild winter. I do remember winters up in Maine now.
Doesn't it snow in Tulsa?
It does a little bit. It's fairly mild, but I'll tell you, one of the stories I covered when I was a reporter in Maine was a sled dog race up in northern Maine, and it was, I believe, 15 below zero, and I was up there, and my camera froze. So I do remember those cold temperatures, and I'm excited.
It doesn't get that cold here, I promise you. 15 below zero is not something that I've seen. Though Maine's not that far if you want to go see us. Yeah. We haven't any sled dog races that I can see. Though winter in Cohasset is a nice time too. So what's on your plate right now? I know that, as you said, it's always changing. So what are some of the things you're working on?
Absolutely. So one of the big campaigns right now that we're working on, working with the new town clerk, Lisa Legg, we have a large early voting campaign that we are putting out there to folks. We've got all types of flyers that we are ready to distribute because early voting starts in the next few weeks, I believe. We've got that. That's a very large project that we're working on. We have the primary coming up as well. So it's a large project. We've also are taping some more Cohasset Commons because we really want to keep folks updated to what's going on there. We also have something big with the Zoning Bylaw Committee that I've been very honored to work with them on.
So there's lots coming as we head into the season. You're going to see some more of Justin on this episode and other episodes. And,
Absolutely.
You can always see something we've just started, and you were able to pivot with our communication consultant, a new Cohasset news blog.
Absolutely. So that Cohasset news blog, that is cohassetmanews.com. That is a wonderful news blog with everything that's happening in and around Cohasset. There are some phenomenal stories, and we update that weekly, so folks are able to go up there. They're also able to sign up. There's a box up in the upper right-hand corner of that website where folks can put in their email, and they can receive updates whenever we update that. So, for instance, we've got the 7th grade girls lacrosse team is on that front page right now. As we know, when we're taping this, we've got some heat advisories. So we've got some information going out to folks about cooling centers that are opening up. So there's all different types of videos and content and information that's on that site.
And you can get that from the town's website, right?
Absolutely.
Just jump right there. Okay?
Absolutely.
And so, again, if you don't have social media, you don't have to worry. You can actually get a lot of this great content right on this news blog. And if you have social media, you can get them both.
Absolutely. And I do want to mention kind of another big project that I've been fortunate enough to work on, and I'm working with Megan James, who is the library director and the community services director, on really revamping the town of Cohasset's website. And I know that's something that a lot of folks have communicated to me that they're looking forward to seeing this new, refreshed website, and we're excited to debut that in early September.
So, again, lots going on. And again, if you could see Justin's work pretty much regularly on the town's Facebook page, our Instagram, our website. Thank you for joining us for this edition of Cohasset Common, and thank you very much, Justin.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, Chris.
Looking forward to seeing you all around Cohasset. Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your day.